Welcome to the Data Coffee Break podcast. I'm Marc.
And I'm Christian.
If you are passionate about data like us, take a seat, relax, and join us to our coffee break where we discuss all things data.
And remember, there are no filters, no PR.
It's just a real life experience. So let's begin.
Welcome, Marc. I can see that you're back in your house after, 2 weeks being traveling around the world?
2 weeks away, 2 weeks and enjoying a bit better weather, but obviously it was for work, so it's always a bit difficult to find some time on evenings to go out for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in London, it's very cold these days.
Yes, actually, the week ahead is going to be below 0 degrees temperatures.
I didn't check.
Yes.
Oh my God. We need to get ready, definitely.
Yes. And last week, Adi actually gave the advice on how to manage yourself, like time manage yourself. So we really wanted to dedicate a whole episode for it.
Definitely, there is many resources online when it comes to time management. But I guess for us, it could be good because we can bring it from a perspective of doing time management for during your work time, in the sense of, or to apply for your current job, and or we've done it, or if we've been successful with some of those, if we've not been successful,
yes.
What we tried, what we heard about as well. I think there is a few of them that could be explored a bit further.
Yes, 100%. So today we're going to give you 10 tips for effective time management, and they are work related, but most of them may go to other parts of life, but I guess they are all intrinsically interdependent. First tip, learn to prioritize. Very recently, Marc introduced me to the concept of the Eisenhower matrix. The whole concept is to identify or help you understand what is urgent versus important. We're going to put the link on the description, but if we take a look at this matrix, so you can write a big square box and put a cross on it, meaning that you're going to have 4 quadrants. On the top left, we have urgent and important. At the top right, we have not urgent but important. At the bottom left, we have not important but urgent. And the bottom right, we have not urgent and not important. And the whole point of this is that the top quadrant is do it or schedule it. For example, respond to that email that you say that I'll come back to you by close of business today. What is not urgent but is also important is, for example, you need to dedicate time to upskill. And what is not important is something that you can delegate when it's urgent, or you delete it, meaning that you stop doing it when it's not urgent and not important. I don't know, Marc, how do you prioritize yourself?
No, I found this technique, methodology, don't know what the best way to describe that, very effective. I actually learned about it on the very first day of engineering school. Basically, the head of the engineering school came to us and draws this square on the board and told us, like, this is all you have to manage your time and your life now. So it's great. But it's a fantastic tool in particular to help you realize what should be things you should, as you say, either delegate or delete from your calendar, delete from activities you have to conduct, because often we add new tasks to ourselves, yes, without actually understanding if there is any real value for us and for the business. And that also helps in that extent. So fantastic tool. Highly recommend to test it and to implement it.
All right. Marc, what's our next one?
Second tip will be to automate similar tasks, which can be also called as batching. The simple idea is avoiding like switching between different tasks a lot, which involved what is called a switching cost. The advantage is when you batch, for example, checking your emails, doing only, let's say, twice a day, and you will answer those emails all at once, completed that, and you can move on to something else. So you're actually concentrating all those actions at a specific time during the day, and it doesn't take you a lot of extra energy for your brain to have to, I would say, accept to move to this new task, to change a new task. It's just like a normal flow. So you become actually more productive at staying within the specific type of task, let's say, and become more effective in this case. And this could be applied in many different aspects. So we're speaking about emails, but let's say you can batch if you're working from home some days and you go to the office other days. Maybe you can also consider batching all your all your meetings with your colleagues or with your clients a specific day, because it can also be helpful and effective. I realized quickly after going back to the office after spending more than a year working from home that I was less productive in the office. So I decided to actually move all the meetings with my colleagues on the days I'm going to the office, simply as I know I will be more effective doing my focus activities on my own at home. Any experience for you on this one, Christian?
Sometimes you can see the calendars of your colleagues, and as you mentioned, I've seen some people that they have 9 to 10 a.m. answering emails and catching up with work.
Oh, yeah, true.
And it's
correct.
Kind of like a focus time for them, right? And yeah, same as you. I see that this switch of people that goes to the office, that now everyone is actually trying to batch the meetings. So next tip, the power of no. So we're going back to what Adi mentioned actually last week. This was his professional advice, and I really believe that it's super valuable. The ability to say no. And here I'm taking this from the angle of having some time for you when you believe that things are not important or not urgent, or simply to say, no, I'm not actually going to go to a specific meeting without a correct agenda. So being able to say no, as well as how you prioritize your life, I find it super, super valuable. It's a skill. I have to admit that it's something that I'm not doing all the time, but I've seen whenever I do that, really good results. What about you, Mark?
Actually, a question for you. What do you, in particular for junior people, what do you do to say no to someone more senior than you or someone with more experience with asking, oh, can you help me with this task? Or I'm assigning this task to you and you want to say no. Do you have experience on that?
Well, at the beginning of my career, I have to admit that I used to say yes to everything because you want to stand out. And it's not about saying, no, I will not do that. That could be even taken the wrong way. It's more around questioning what is the value of the task that you're going to be doing. To your example, if someone that is senior asks me to go to a specific meeting that I know that there is no value out of it, and I could be doing something else for another customer or for another project that I'm working on, I would actually question, well, is this the best use of my time?
Yeah.
What is your experience on that?
Yeah, actually, I was going to add as experience on that. I learned to say, let me come back to you and I tell you if I can do it.
That's great.
That gives you time to step back and to reassess and also understand if it's actually bringing value to the company, to your clients, and to yourself, and figuring out if are you actually the right person to do this kind of action. Maybe there is someone else who is better suited or is part of the actually job description for another person to do that. It's obviously interesting if you want to develop your skills, but that could be useful. So just say to the person, I come back to you and let you know if I can help on that. That will be my tip on that.
That is really cool. Your advice takes me to the next tip. Have a daily schedule and stick to it. Coming back to prioritization, something that is perhaps not urgent, you can actually have a schedule and have those activities that you set up a deadline and you have a goal towards it. This way you can actually say, every day I will accomplish something that could be, for example, you schedule exercising or upskilling, but you have that plan, that is scheduled that you stick to it. And even having that will help you actually to say no, right? You have your daily goal and you have now that limit and I would say even a deadline for you to actually accomplish that. Do you have a schedule, Mark?
In my case, it may be a bit more for personal. Maybe I should implement as well at work. You say that. But definitely on the personal aspect, I have a specific schedule to go to the gym, some specific outside activities, etc. That helps me, as you said, like to say no, to make me think back about some of the potential specific goals or personal health aspect I want to put myself. And in a work environment, yeah, it's in particular important when I had to do some specific presentation that require quite an extensive amount of preparation. And you can be just taken by all the other activities and making sure you stick to those 1 or 2 hours a day to prepare on this presentation is so important, because it's so much better to do that than rushing at the end as well. That's my perspective, or I used it. Definitely love it.
Yeah, 100%. I use it for that as well. I try to always have that schedule when I say this is the time that I'm going to have presentations, and this is the time that I'm going to prepare for them. I should have more on the personal side. I admit that.
So you apply it more professional, and the opposite, I do more personal. All right. So we have a balance here. All right. Number 5, linked to what we discussed with batching on the second tip, is obviously multitasking. So that's pretty much the opposite of batching. I touch on the aspect of this cost that is for your brain to actually switch tasks. And that's so important. Multitasking force you or put you in this situation where you might not do the work correctly enough with the accuracy that you will do when you're actually focusing on a specific task for a certain amount of time with removing all the single distraction. I see you nodding, Christian. You have something to say on this one.
I totally agree with you that the quality of your work can be compromised there. One of the things that I would say is that I know a few people that can do that proper multitasking, but it doesn't last for long. Something, for example, that happened during lockdown and pandemic times was that we had all this online training
instead of having in person.
Yes, exactly. And I just had it on my headphones while I was actually answering some emails or texting people around planning. And definitely it's not something that I could actually kept going, right? I ended up dedicating some time outside of work to actually do the online training. So it's just my personal experience. So I don't know, Mark, did you have any experience on that?
No, the online training, I can refer to that. You end up finishing the training without really remembering what you learned. So yeah, that's a proof of bad multitasking. And the weird thing is we feel like superheroes when we multitask. We're like, yeah, I've done that, and that.
Yes.
And when you come back to look in detail what you've done, and you realize, oh my God, there is so many mistakes, or my email is like full of contradictions and things like that.
Yes.
So it can be very, very bad in the short term, actually, even in the short term. And I was going to say in the long term, but simply in the short term, the quality is not at the right level.
Quick one. If you're enjoying this episode and our show, please make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links on the description as per usual.
Also, if you'd like to grow this community with us, think about sharing this episode with a friend or a colleague interested about all things data.
Now, back to the episode. Tip number 6. Time box your tasks. And this is the concept of setting limits on your tasks, but it's also really linked to avoid what is called the planning fallacy. And the planning fallacy is about doing overly optimistic delivery estimate. That you can think about, delivering a project. I would say even for you and I, Mark, sometimes we say, yes, let's record one episode, 1 hour, and we end up doing like 2-3 hours. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that time box your daily schedule that we talked about before. With time, you will learn, and as with experience of doing similar tasks, you will have better time limits that will allow you to stick to those times, but definitely be organized.
Yeah, and that's true. In particular, you learn about your own capacity in those tasks, so you becoming better at estimating those activities. I like that. I will actually also add from a personal experience, because I had a real tendency to be perfectionist. So in some activities, time boxing, so giving myself a limit of time for some activities where I know I will tend to do too many hours, where the real value of doing those extra hours is not worth it. And I have this time limit, and at the end of this time limit, all right, the task is done, is good enough, because it can be good enough in this case, and it doesn't require to be like pixel perfect if it's like something creative of design, for example. So that's also my take on the time boxing. Next tip, I think number 7, it's leveraging time management tools. I think it's because we are two technologists at heart in some aspect. So we do like to test new tools, new softwares. They bring a lot of value. Sometimes as an overkill, I would have to say. In the past, I've been overusing some of them, but there are some very good time management tools. So both of us are using some of those ones. Obviously, calendar, we've been discussing about that, is fantastic because it really helps you to frame your day, your weeks, and also looking at that from a week-to-week perspective or month-to-month perspective really helps in that aspect. So planning your weeks ahead or months ahead for your professional life and personal life, it works for both. All the tools we're using, so Notion on our side, we are using it extensively. I'm a huge advocate and evangelist, I would say, for this tool.
Yeah.
It helps us specifically for the podcast, as we can basically put some deadlines and create a calendar. And it's a great way to think ahead for us. Like just before this episode, we are actually planning the next 2 months, or when we're going to record the episodes and what we have to do by each of the dates. Another one I've been using personally at the time when I start to really consider the aspect of time management from a work perspective is a tool called Toggle. So TOGGL. And with this tool is basically you can track your time for every single activity. This can be an overkill in the sense like you can go very detailed on everything you track, but it's fantastic in the sense that at the end of, let's say, I recommend to do 1, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks tracking everything. First, you will very quickly realize if you're doing multitasking, because if you stick to it to track everything, you realize, oh my God, I need to go back to the software to say that I'm doing my emails and now I'm answering Slack and now I'm doing that. So you realize quickly when you are multitasking, but at the end of those 2 weeks, you will have a really good picture of how many hours you're spending doing emails, how many hours you're spending analyzing data, how many hours you're spending, if we speak again about data, preparing your data or finding the right data, etc. And that can help you to relate back to point number 1, which is what is a priority, what is important, what is urgent, etc. Fantastic tool. I wouldn't recommend to do it like constantly, as is also some aspect I'm consuming, but quite good. What's your point of view on this one?
I can see why you are a perfectionist.
Yeah, so that's why I stopped to use it.
We have Notion, calendar. I would say as well, consider some automation tools for your work, something that you can bring to your work or your personal life. The podcast, for example, we use Buzzsprouts. And Buzzsprouts is a platform that allows us to publish the episode and automatically will be released on all major podcast platforms instead of going one by one. Another thing is If This Then That or Zapier. So, for example, we record this podcast on a platform called Squadcast, and once the recording is finished, it automatically gets pushed into, for example, a Google Drive or to other platforms. I would say, look for any automation tools that you can leverage, because in the long run, you will benefit from having those, avoiding those manual tasks as much as possible.
Yeah, all of those are fantastic in the sense that you replacing yourself by a tool to basically do tasks that are, I don't want to say meaningless, but that are not adding value and take some time on your calendar. So if you can automate, it's benefits because you save more time for yourself. Yeah, definitely.
All right, that was a good one. Yeah,
that was quite lengthy.
Yes. Tip number 8 is enjoy your breaks.
Oh, really? Where does that come from?
Yeah, exactly. So this comes from the point of coming back to that prioritization. When you're having a break, you can actually now reflect and think back on what is, for example, important in your life. So you can actually have that constant prioritization. Or even from the point of view of when you're having a step back, you can actually understand what you like to do or what you would like to change. And I guess maybe the word break can be thought about here as holiday. I don't know, Mark, do you use breaks to actually think about what you're going or what you're doing?
Yeah, in particular, like this one, when I look from a perspective of, okay, after work, just disconnecting, going out, going to do some sport, meeting some friends. Because, when you finish work and you're in this phase where you're in between work and something else and you're still thinking about some activities. So having something that really helps you to disconnect, it's very good. Because you take the time to think about something else, and subconsciousness sometimes works well. It helps you to solve some issues, some problems that you're finding in your work as well. And that's only, in my point of view, only works when you take a break from your work, when you take a break from the tasks and where you try to solve something. So a break can be so beneficial in that aspect. Yes, very true.
Right. Next tip.
Tip number 9 will be to learn how to delegate to other people. I wouldn't put delegating as a negative thing, because it's a fantastic opportunity for other people to learn first. So you were speaking about like when you're junior, so it's obviously great when someone assigns you a task, because it might give you the opportunity to learn new aspects of your job, learn new techniques, etc. So in many ways is because someone delegated on you, and that's extremely beneficial for you for your learning. But at some point, some of those activities you become very efficient at it, and maybe you've been assigned to more important projects or tasks. So in your turn, delegating some of those tasks where you know how to do it, you know really well, but you want to focus on learning new things, and you have some colleagues that don't have this skill, can benefit from that. So delegating those activities can be at the end beneficial for both individuals here.
Yes, agree. Same as every single tip here, this is something that comes with time, with experience. But if you don't start at least prioritizing that delegation or learning how to do that, this is something to consider. For example, if I would say, how do you learn how to delegate? Honestly, this happens when you realize that you don't have time for yourself, or you end up working, extra hours, and just realize that I should be doing this.
Fantastic. Last tip. Let me do it. So tip number 10, tackle the most difficult task first, meaning tackling the most difficult task in the morning, for example, at work. I fall in this trap often. I have to admit, but starting the day by checking your emails, checking your Slack or Teams, and ending up already like answering all of those, and you realize you have this massive project that you have to deliver, this presentation you have to deliver the day after, and it's already 3 p.m. when you realize you finished to answer those emails. So the idea is to, I don't know if it's a theory behind it, but there is a sentence which is, it's that frog, basically. So do this most difficult task first in the morning. That's also when you have the most energy and when your brain is most ready to tackle those kind of activities.
Eat that frog. I really like the whole concept of when you are at your prime during the day, right? So that's when you tackle the most important task. Understanding how to prioritize that and go for it is a really good tip. I have to say it's a pro tip, the one that we're closing with today. Tackle the most difficult task first.
And that's it. 10 tips. So if I summarize again, learn to prioritize, automate your task batching, the power of saying no, daily schedule and stick to it, avoid multitasking, excessive multitasking, time box your days, if I'm correct, how to say that, leverage time management tools, enjoy your breaks, learn how to delegate, and eat that frog as a finish. That was fantastic learning. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Mark. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this episode. This podcast represents our views and not the ones of our employers.
Our mission at the Data Coffee Break podcast is to inform you and help you grow in this always changing data field.
Follow us and get into the conversation with the community on our LinkedIn page and Instagram.
See you next Tuesday, and until then, keep your data caffeinated.